Pause, it's Jen. This is another episode of Reframing Me. Happy summer, like officially summer. We have now passed the summer solstice, and so we are officially in the throes of summer. And I love summer, and we celebrate all of the different seasons as we have. We started off with the transition to fall on our very first episode. We then talked about the spring equinox on the spring equinox. So it's only right that we also talk about this transition to summer. I remember summers of the past that have been super relaxed and laid back. And thus far, these first few weeks of summer have been like the exact opposite of that. It's been every morning since the first day. The boys are up and out super early for football practice every single day, which means I am up every single day super early, even earlier than normal. And then every weekend has been football camps and college visits with my rising senior. So I definitely wouldn't describe it as relaxing or laid back. I would describe it as stress. It made me realize that I needed to go back and re-listen to some of my greatest hits. You know, it's funny when I listen to old episodes, I'm like, wow, she's smart. Who is that bitch? She knows her stuff. And then I'm like, oh, wait, that's me. How can I be so wise one day and such a hot mess another day? And then I'm like, well, we are complex enough beings to be both. And then I'm like, look at that. Smart Jen is back. But then I'll look down and I'll still have my pajamas on and I'll be like, but is she? She looks a bit of a hot mess to me. Well, going back and listening to these things helped me to get through these past few weeks. And I'm hoping that maybe they might also help some of you too, because I know that the summers of high school, and especially summer leading up to senior year, and I would assume from what I've heard, the summer leading up to college as well, they're not the laid back and relaxing summers. They are stressful. So I figured that if I could use a refresher, maybe some of y'all could too. So DJ Jen is mixing it up a bit with today's episode. Some of it may sound familiar to you, but remember, it's the summer remix, so it's new and improved. Stick around then afterwards because I've also added a conversation on what your rising seniors should be doing this summer so that we can be sure that we're checking our boxes together. I know that I like a clear list, so we'll walk through a summer checklist of 12 items for rising seniors. And realistically, if you have a rising junior or even a rising sophomore, you're probably going to find it helpful too, because unfortunately, there are a few things I'm seeing on this list that realistically we probably should have done last year, but I never even thought about them. We're okay. There's still plenty of time, but it might be helpful for you to be more proactive than we were. Okay, so we're going to start off with early 2023 Jen, who was super wise and who gave me the patience to practice the pause these last few weeks. And then we'll get a visit from 2022 Jen, who will start off with an issue from a reframing friend about her 15-year-old daughter, who, now that I do the math, is probably in reality 16 now. Well, back in the past, she was pulling away from her mom, who also felt that her behavior was entitled and unappreciative. We talk about the family communication perspective of stress, the qualities of a stressor event, how stress fluctuates throughout the life cycle. We will talk about the difference between developmental or predictable stresses and unpredictable stresses, as well as coping with stress and some tips and tricks that I use to handle stress. Well, reframing friend of now 16-year-old girl, I hope that advice and information helped you in the past, and I hope that it helps some of y'all today too.
Practice the pause. Pause before assuming. Pause before reacting. Pause before speaking. Practice the pause. We live in a world of immediacy, but sometimes, well, most times, immediacy isn't the answer. There is strength in taking the pause. Before you assume, take the pause. What else could this be? Why else is he behaving this way? What is she really doing? Practice the pause. Before you react, take the pause. Is this response going to be productive? Is there a better way that I could react? How could I respond from a place of peace? Practice the pause. Before you speak, take the pause. Is this kind? Is this helpful? Is this warranted? Are my words supportive? Are my words authentic? Practice the pause. Is this who I want to be? Is this how I want to be seen? Is this how I want to react? We can't control what our day brings, but we can control how we respond to it. So always take the pause.
With our teenagers, we and their home, we're their safe space. And there's a concept that we talk about in family communication called non-volition. Okay. It's one of the things that makes a family system unique from other types of social systems. And non-volition is the concept that the relationships we have with our family members are non-voluntary. They're permanent. And because they're non-voluntary and permanent, it gives us this concept of non-volition. We don't choose our family. We can't just get rid of our family. But what that means is that they can't get rid of us either. And so, because of that, there is this concept that we have this permanent relationship that won't go away. So, unfortunately, what that sometimes leads to is lashing out, is that taking things out on the ones we love most, acting out. We do those things because we know that that relationship is stable. It's permanent. They're not going to be able to get rid of us. And when you are 15 and you need to lash out at someone because you feel like the world is out of your control, because of that, who do you lash out at? You lash out at the person who loves you the most, the person who you know isn't going anywhere, the person who will stay by your side no matter how you act. And that's us, right? That's their mother. And that's their father. That's why parents take the brunt of it with teenagers. And, it's not just teenagers. We all do it, right? We all have that tendency to lash out at the people who we know we can count on to stay even when we do. We save our best behavior for those who really don't necessarily deserve it, and our worst behavior for those who should be deserving of much better behavior. But because we have that sense of non-volition, because family systems have that permanence, we do have a tendency to take advantage of that and know that they're not going to leave. So all of the frustrations that are pent up throughout her day with her friends, with her classes, with her activities, with dating, all of the things that she can't control, she takes out on those who she knows are staying, those who she knows she can lash out at, and they're going to be there. Now, that doesn't make it pleasant for us, because even though we do the same thing to those around us, by the time we get to be our age, we start to recognize it a little bit and start to temper it down and start to be able to control it. And whereas we might lash out here or there, or we might take something out undeservedly on someone, overall, we've kind of got it together. But teenagers, they haven't figured that out yet. And their hormones are a mess. And so they do have a tendency to take it out on us. Now, that doesn't make it any better when you're in the heat of the moment. That doesn't make it feel better when they do that to you. But it also means you have to come at it from that perspective, that that's where it's coming from. And so you can, if you look at it from that perspective and know that that's where it's coming from and understand, I tell my children all the time about mean kids or mean girls, or, when somebody does something hurtful to you. When someone's mean, when someone's hurtful, it says so much more about them than it does about you. So often, if we are feeling bad, dark, hurtful, sad, angry, unhappy with ourselves, we manifest that in our behavior with others. And so when someone is mean to you, it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with you. It has to do about them and how they're feeling. And I tell my kids this all the time because it's so true. And because it took me so long to come to this realization that even with my own behavior, sometimes I would find myself being rude to others, or being snappy to others, or thinking negative things about others. And when I take a look inside myself, I realized, wow, that was totally how I was feeling inside. It wasn't what I thought of them. I was projecting that out onto them. I was looking at myself mean. I was looking at myself ugly. I was unhappy with my own self, my own behavior, my own insides. And so the only way that I knew how to handle that was to project it out onto somebody else. And, once realizing that, everything changed for me. I was able to realize that that was what I was doing. And first of all, once you realize a behavior that you really don't like, you can kind of fix it in yourself. But it also helped me to see others when they behave that way. And instead of looking at them like, yuck, instead, I could look at them and think, that's how they feel about themselves. And so that's why they're acting that way towards me. And so that's something that you can really take into your interactions with her and your interactions with others that are acting that way towards you, that it's not because of you, it's because of them. And so you can kind of adjust your own behavior accordingly. I know that I was just telling my husband something similar the other day, just that when you are dealing with a teenager. Obviously, I was talking about our teenagers. Don't let them get to you. Don't let them, sometimes if you just, instead of when they're yelling or they're snapping or they're saying something, instead of yelling or snapping back, instead realize that this is because they're feeling bad about something. And so change your tone from one that is anger to change it to one that is, how can I help you? How can I make this better? What is it that's in your life that's causing you to feel bad? And how can I fix that? And that will allow you to see it through a different frame. And it will help them to see you through a different frame. Instead of someone who is provoking them and who is giving them the right then, because now you're yelling back and that they can yell back, instead of someone that is prolonging the exchange, now you're changing it to one of, you want to help me. You want to talk to me. You want to make it better. And so that's that's a particular way of dealing with that situation. Instead of telling her that she is unappreciative or telling her that she is entitled, maybe talk about what you see as being the problem and why are they treating it that way? Why are they behaving that way? And maybe you see it as entitlement because it's something that you weren't given as a child, or you didn't have as a teenager. And so for her to have it and seemingly be unappreciative of it, that's entitlement to you, or something that you have worked very hard to provide for her, and she's not recognizing that, maybe explain to her that you do this for her. And so it's hurtful to you when it feels like she's being unappreciative. But fighting fire with fire only creates more fire. And so there are different ways to respond. And sometimes the best way to respond is to walk away. Let her have her moment. Let her realize that it's okay to have those emotions, that she doesn't need to control everything. So walk away from it and let the situation reset. Now, other types of stress. All right, so that's something that many of us are dealing with in some capacity. So what's a stressor? All right, stressor is everything, right? Everything that we come in contact with, it can be a stressor event. Now, some things are little stressors, right? Running late to a meeting, having 2 things scheduled, having to go to a football banquet tonight. That would be a stressor I have. But having to do things, having responsibilities, those are stressor events. Having an exam, a child who has an exam or has to make new friends at a new sport that's starting up. Those are stressor events. Big things are obviously stressor events. A death in the family, loss of a job, loss of a house, or purchase of a house, getting a new job, having a new family member. Those are good events, but they're still stressors. So stressor events, they aren't good or bad. They're neutral. It's us who assigns the quality of positivity or negativity to it. And so stressor events, we look at them through what's the balance of this? Is this what's called eustress or is this distress? Because just because it's eustress or good stress doesn't make it any less stressful than a bad stress. It still causes that tension and that stress on our bodies and on our minds, and it still fills us up. So, I always think that I'm going through all the lists of things that are stressing me out. And it's like, I think about it, it's like, this is good. They're all good. All of this is, they're all good things. But just because they're all good things doesn't make them not stressful. And so you don't have to feel bad by thinking that you are under a lot of stress. And then someone asks you, well, what do you have to be stressed out about? It's like, well, I have all of these things. Well, those are good things. Do you know what I would do for those kind of stress? Well, but that doesn't make them not stressed. Just like a wedding or having a baby or a child going to college. Okay, those are all positive things. Those are good things, but they are still stressors. And so the first quality that we look at with a stressor event is that balance. Is this a good stress or is this a bad stress? There's also looking at stressors there are chronic stressors and there are acute stressors. So how long does this stressor event last? What is the duration? Acute stressors, they come on and they are a one and done. It's a stressor event. It's something that happens. Chronic ones are a stress that is always there. If you don't like your job and you go to it every day, that's a chronic stress for you. If you have a job that you do like, but it has a lot of responsibilities, you have other people's fate in your hands. You are responsible for a task that's very important, that you're determining other people's futures. That's a stress. It's a chronic stress. It's a good stress. You like it. It's a positive thing. You have an income. It's a good job. You're doing work that you like, but it's still a chronic stress. Every day it's there. If you have a negative relationship with your in-laws, it's a chronic stress, right? An acute stress, might be a one-time thing. It doesn't mean there's not lasting repercussions. It can be a big thing, a death, losing someone, an illness, a concussion. Okay, these things can be stressors that, yes, there can be those long-term, but it comes on and it happens once. The causality is interesting because we treat and cope with stress differently based on how we attribute the causality of it, the locus of causality. So locus of causality is similar to the concept of locus of control. Locus of control is how much you feel like inside of you can control a situation. And people have different calibers of that attribute. I know this is probably hard to believe, but if I take the measure of locus of control, which I have taken a number of times, and I always seem to get the same result for whatever reason, but I am like at the far end of the spectrum as an internal locus of control. What that means is I think I can control everything. I think I can handle everything. I think that if the people just put the world in my control, it would go so much better. I think that everything is somehow a direct response to what I have done. And so an internal locus of control, you attribute the causality of things to something that you have done. If you are on the far crazy town end of internal locus of control. External locus of control, my husband definitely leans more that way. He's not way far at the end of the spectrum like I am by any means, but he definitely, thankfully, weighs a little bit more towards that side. External locus of control then is that you attribute situations to external causes. All right. So someone who would be my equivalent at the other side of the locus of control spectrum would think that it's always beyond them. There's nothing I can do. Okay. It's predetermined, or it's just something that everybody else can has this going on. I had nothing to do with it. Not my fault. None of it's me. I just am a passive bystander in all this. I don't have any control. It's out there. Okay. So you have those far extremes. Most people are like my husband, somewhere kind of in between. And so the locus of causality with stress is similar, that we can start to react. And so we want to try to, when we're faced with a stressor event, we try to make meaning out of it. Right? That's just what we do as individuals, right? We try to understand it and we try to make some kind of sense out of it. We try to define it or assess a situation. And so part of that is identifying what is the cause of this stressor so that we can know how do we adapt to it. And so if we attribute the cause as something that is internal and something that is due to our individual action, then we can try to make changes internally to try to fix that event. So people with a internal or who attribute a stressor as internal will react different than those who attribute it as external when we believe that the event came from someone or something in the environment. So for example, a stressor event like a diagnosis of an illness. When that stressor event is internally attributed, that the person believes that the cancer or the high blood pressure or the heart disease or whatever the illness is an event that was a result of an individual action, they also then now they can start to cope with it and start to respond to this with internal responses. And so people who, or stressors who attribute a diagnosis of an illness internally are oftentimes the ones who then begin to respond with changes to themselves. Changes in diet, changes in supplements, taking the most proactive measures, beginning to try to lose weight or exercise or, have more healthy habits, take medication that's prescribed. That internal control, internal response to that stressor situation is different than someone who has that external and that, oh, well, this is just what's going to happen. I didn't do anything to deserve this. It just kind of hit me. Now we also take other stressor situations and we can look at those as being external. And so external is that something that comes from the environment, and we can see those and we can see how we can adapt to these externals. So something might be due to a natural disaster, and we couldn't do anything about it. We couldn't prevent that from happening. And a lot of families, I live in the South and we live on the coast. And so we have, terrible hurricanes at times. And so we've seen flooding and disaster, and those are stressor events that come from something in the environment that you can do nothing about. So stressor events can be attributed to internal or external causes. And then also there are internal or external responses to differing types of stressor events. Stressors can also be predictable or unpredictable, developmental or unpredictable. What I mean by that is that there are some stresses in life that we can totally predict. This is going to happen. And we can predict these based on what we call a life cycle perspective, that there are different stages that we go through in life, and they are naturally accompanied by certain stressors. So you get married, and there are certain stressors that we can predict are going to happen. It's just a natural part of getting married. Just like when you were just grown up, newly adult, going out on your own for the first time, kind of separating from your parents, whether it's living on your own or getting a job or paying bills for the first time, trying to make decisions and be responsible on your own. Those were natural due to the stage of your life stressors. And so if I look at one of my students who is just about to graduate, kind of going off on their own as an adult for the first time, looking for a job, finding a place to live, trying to differentiate themselves from their parents, from their family, and showing, being an independent adult, I can look at them and know the kinds of things that they're facing, the stressors that are natural in that stage of life. Just like them getting married, I can tell you newly married couples are going to face certain stressors. They're going to face the stressors of, merging two individuals, merging two families, coming up with new traditions, coming up with new, what are we going to do? What are we going to believe? Coming up with communication styles that mesh, trying to establish careers and houses and make decisions now as a unit. Just like when you have a baby and think of the stressors that you had, bringing this baby home, now having this person to take care of, trying to figure out what type of parents we're going to be, how are we going to behave, who's going to be in charge. Those are natural stressors. Most of us then are in that next stage, which is having adolescents, families with adolescents, families with teens. That's where I am. And I feel like I am just entering that stage, moving out of the families with young children stage and moving into the parents or families with teens or adolescent stage. Now, because I am just moving into this stage or feel like I've just gotten here, things are more chaotic for me than they are for some of you, because some of you have probably been fully embedded in this parents with adolescents stage for a while. And so if you are more weighted towards the latter part of this stage, and you probably feel like you've got this down, whereas I am flailing trying to figure this out. I was a total expert at the families with young children stage. I had that down. I knew it. I knew it all. But now I'm gone from that. And now I'm starting all over again. So the transition periods between these different stages, they're the most chaotic and they're the most stressful. And so that's when you're kind of trying to figure it out. Also goes into some conversations I've had with reframing friends about a month ago back at Halloween. And it kind of it transfers to now, especially moving up into the holiday season. But at Halloween in particular, I had a couple of conversations. It was the first Halloween for me that, I don't know, this was a different one because I guess it should have probably realistically happened sooner, but maybe because like COVID years, I swear time's all off because of COVID years. But so this was the first Halloween that I really felt it. It was the first Halloween that I didn't trick or treat, that we didn't trick or treat, that one of my sons went trick or treating with his friends, but everybody was kind of set into different paths. Everyone was scattered. It wasn't the Halloweens of the past. It wasn't everybody getting dressed up, putting their costumes together, going to friends' house, little hayride through the neighborhood, trick-or-treating, us hanging out, everybody, kids sitting down at the end and doing their little candy swap, and all the fun stuff that made me love Halloween wasn't it anymore. In fact, the day before Halloween, I, of course, had a little breakdown because I realized we hadn't gone to the pumpkin patch, or not the pumpkin patch, the corn maze that we were supposed to. And there wasn't any time to go. And we all hadn't been together for a time that there was any availability to carve pumpkins. Like it was October 30th and we hadn't touched pumpkins. And so it kind of gave me this little bit of a breakdown. Like I liked these things. I liked these traditions and I don't have it. So it actually led me to keep my daughter home one day. Little did I know that we were in the middle of all of these days off, or I wouldn't have done it. But because I wanted her, the boys were off, and I wanted her home too, so that we could carve pumpkins on Halloween. And these conversations that I had with friends, they were saying similar things. One cried her way through the pumpkin patch because this was the last Halloween that her son was going to be at home before college. And that was it. And I had another telling me about spending hours and hours going through old Halloween pictures, thinking about costumes of the past and Halloween traditions of the past, and just being sad that that was over with. And so for us, that's the new norm now, I guess is the way that people say it. Now, you have to get acclimated and adjusted to the new normal. But for many of you who are like, yeah, we've been here for years, it's not sad anymore. Now we have our new Halloween traditions. We set things up differently. We handle things differently. I don't sit and cry over Halloween pictures anymore. That's because you've had time to adjust. And so for those transition periods when you're at just trying to figure it out, whether it's trying to set new rules, trying to set new bedtimes, trying to set curfews, and trying to know, hey, this is the first time that you've had a girlfriend or you've had a boyfriend, and do we let you hang out by yourself? Are you allowed to be off in a room by yourselves? Do we keep doors closed, or do we keep doors open? And how often do I check on you? You've figured that out. And so I'm hopeful that I'll figure those things out. But those transition periods are when you're trying to figure things out and the stress is even greater. So when you are in this parents with adolescence stage, those are the things you're trying. So we know that that's coming. We know that you're going to have to figure out how to give your children more independence, how to allow them to have more freedom, how to try to figure out who you are amongst this. Because, like we said, you're getting your freedom back, you're getting some individuality back, you are becoming you a bit more than you were with families with young children. But now you have to reacquaint yourself to that person. You have to reacquaint yourself to your spouse. So those are stressors that we can predict in this stage of the life cycle, just like families with children who they're launching, right? So that next stage, when they're not fully on their own, but you're just launching them out into the world, there are certain predictable stressors that come with that. Just like empty nest families, there are certain predictable stressors that come with that situation. So some of our stressors can be predicted by understanding where we're at in the life cycle, and we can totally expect them to happen. But then there are those other stressors that just come and they hit us out of left field. They just come out of nowhere. And those unpredictable stressors are often quite catastrophic, and they often put us into a crisis mode. So unpredictable stressors are the ones that come out of nowhere and impact our lives, often dramatically. When I teach this in family communication, I have a quote that I use that I think defines it perfectly. It says that unpredictable stressors are the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune that may disrupt the life cycle process. They're not those predictable developmental life cycle stressors. They're the ones that we don't see coming. And they result from situations that are unique and unexpected, unanticipated, and most likely they're not likely to repeat, but they do require far-reaching and very rapid changes to the family system. They can be divorce, economic challenges, a serious injury or an illness or a diagnosis of a condition. It can be a big move, something that you don't expect happening, but you have to adapt to it quickly. Adapting to these unpredictable stressors, or even to some that are predictable stressors, can sometimes throw a family into a crisis situation. So a crisis occurs when that person or that family unit lacks the resources to cope. Because every time we're faced with stress, we need to cope. And so if our coping resources are depleted, if it's like we just can't handle anymore, we just can't take anymore, it's like that old straw that breaks the camel's back type thing. If you've had a lot of previous stressors in recent years, it's just piling one more thing on that's just too much to handle. And so that stressor can then turn it into a crisis. And so, honestly, think about it. We all have been through so much stress in the last couple of years. And that's just as a world, we've all been through so much. And in communities, we've been through so much. In families, as individuals. So realistically, a lot of stressors that we're facing right now that in other more ordinary times might not have affected us as much, or might not have sent us into crisis mode. Now, because of the fact that we've already had so much piled up, this on top of that is just too much. And so just sends us into that crisis mode. And so to us, something that might not in and of itself be a crisis situation, as coping with it might feel like a crisis because of the pile up in it. Just like if you have had a number of issues that you've faced, a stressor event can become a crisis because of that. But the stressor event causes the crisis that then we feel a degree of shock from. We go through stages. We go through the process of understanding and of working through the crisis, starting with our shock of the situation, our disbelief, maybe denial of it. Then we results in anger, confusion. We might blame someone, whether it's blaming an institution or blaming another or blaming ourselves. The internal or external causality that we talked about might lead to depression. But ultimately, for most individuals, for most of us, we need to reorganize. When we are faced with a crisis situation, we are forced to reorganize ourselves, reorganize our family unit, resulting in an acceptance and beginning the steps of recovery from that crisis. Not everyone is capable of recovering from a crisis situation or even from a stressor situation, but all crises cause individuals and members to experience the progression of feelings through those different stages. But sometimes people get stuck in that coping process and they never reach that final realignment, resurgence, that kind of acceptance stage. And so they get caught in an impasse. And so while there is no right or wrong way to cope in a situation, not everyone recovers from the stress. Some get caught in those stages, but many of us move through the stages and results in a transformation of ourselves, of our family system, may cause people to become more separated from others or more connected to others. I'm sure that most of you, the crises that we've all faced in the last few years, I'm guessing that I'm not the only one that post-COVID Jen is an entirely different person than pre-COVID Jen. And I'm guessing many of your post-COVID families, post-COVID personalities are quite different than your pre-COVID ones. So oftentimes these coping stages that we go through cause us to form different connections and sever certain connections to separate ourselves. So we become a different individual and a different unit going throughout these stages of coping. Some of the things that I use, I can tell you that I've not reached a level of like Zen here. I've reached some degree of Zen, but I haven't reached a level that I don't experience stress or that I don't get overwhelmed by stress at times. But I will tell you that I have some behaviors, some tips and tricks, I guess, so to speak, that I have found over the years to manage my stress and to help me deal with stress as it comes to me. So first of all, yes, just take what you will from these. If you hear these and you're like, that's awesome, I'm totally going to use it, then please do. Let me know how it goes. I hope they work for you as well as they've worked for me. Use it as an a la carte menu. Pick and choose and say, no, that one's not for me. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. Oh yeah, that one sounds good. I'm going to do it. That's totally fine. Or maybe none of them are, and you have an entirely different way that you manage things. And I would love to hear that too, because I would love maybe to incorporate some of your daily habits and your daily rituals into my life to try to help me even progress farther with handling stress of my life. So first of all, meditation. I cannot speak highly enough about meditation and the impacts that it has had on my life, and that I am so certain it can have on yours too. I've practiced yoga for like 25 26 years, a regular, very strong yoga practice, but I could not get into meditation. Just couldn't do it. I think I saw it as being something different than I see it now. In the past, I just kind of envisioned like sitting there with my eyes closed, breathing, and not thinking. And my brain doesn't work that way. Like I cannot just shut it off. It doesn't work. I can't shut it off. I wish I could. I wish I could a lot of times. I'd sleep a lot better probably if I could, but I can't. It's just not how I'm built. And so once I discovered through using, I love my Peloton and I love my the Peloton platforms, and through the Peloton meditation, the guided meditations, I have discovered that I cannot live without meditating, and it is such a huge benefit to me. I started at the beginning of this year. That was my primary, like, I'm going to do this in 2022, and I am very, very, very proud to say that it is December 1st and I have meditated at least once a day, if not twice or multiple times a day, every day of this year. So yay me, I did it. I'm doing it. And I cannot imagine my life without it. I do it as soon as I get up in the morning. It's the very first thing. I set my alarm 15 minutes earlier than I need to so that I can meditate. That was a big thing for me because I have to make the time. And I did. I had the discipline and I make the time. And it has gotten me through a lot of things that I don't think I would have handled as well as I have if I had not had such a solid meditation practice. In the morning, when my alarm goes off, the very first thing I do 5 roll-up stretches. Like if you've ever done Pilates, like the roll up and reach towards your toes, reach as far as you can and stretch out. I do 5 of those just to kind of wake up and start to stretch out my body. And then I adjust my pillows, I grab my AirPods and I sit up and I find myself a morning meditation to do. And, I usually try to aim for a meditation in the morning that's centered on gratitude. I do find that if I can start the day recognizing all that I have to be grateful for, that it really sets me on a good path for the day. It just really to kind of recognize that I am grateful that I even woke up. I'm grateful for every breath that I get the opportunity to take. I am grateful for the home that I woke up in, the bed that I woke up in, the people and animals who surround me. So just thinking about the basics of that, the point that I'm grateful that I have a reason that I have to get up at 5:45 when my alarm goes off. Even though I don't want to get up at 5:45 when my alarm goes off, I am grateful that I have the opportunity and the reasons to do so. Just putting life into that different frame of gratitude can really start your day in a proper way. I also try to meditate another time during the day, oftentimes in the evening. But you can really, I find it to be very beneficial, whether it's, just watching how I want my day to unfold, looking at it through that lens of gratitude, or trying to seek out performance, or trying to seek out courage or peace, or whatever it is that I'm looking for in myself to bring that out through meditation. Another thing that I do is exercise, and exercise helps with stress so much. I've always had a really, really strong exercise fitness kind of mentality. But to make sure that it's that movement, it's that getting my heart going, getting my body moving, making myself strong, whether it's internally making myself strong, making my muscles strong, making my mind strong by being able to persevere and accomplish things, getting that energy moving in my body. So it can be something strong like lifting weights or high intensity interval training, or it can be going out and getting a walk, having a stretch. Those types of movements are just as much medicine for your body, for your mind, for your soul, and it really does help manage stress. Another thing that I have begun to incorporate in my life the last about 2 months now, it should have been more, only I couldn't bring myself to do it, is I heard that if you drink olive oil, a shot of olive oil, tablespoon of olive oil every morning on an empty stomach, about all of the different health benefits that it has. Now I'm like, okay, I'm willing to try it. I'm like a supplement queen. I will try any of this stuff. If it says it's going to be healthy for me, I'm going to try it. So I just have a really hard time drinking things. I can't drink things I don't like. So I bought myself a good bottle of olive oil that followed all of the recommendations that it said it should have. And it sat on the counter. It sat on the counter for like 2 weeks, and I just stared at it every day. Every time I would walk by, it was right on the counter, and I'd get up in the morning and I'd look at it and I'd be like, no way, no day. I cannot drink this. No. So it was all of a sudden about 2 weeks in one day, then it was like a couple hours after I'd gotten up, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do it. I can do it. I got my mind in the right spot. My stomach's not empty like it's supposed to be, but you know what? I'm going to try it. It's not going to hurt. So I just did it. I took the tablespoon of olive oil, and it didn't kill me. It wasn't my favorite. I'm going to admit it was kind of gross at first, but the next day I was able to do it as soon as I woke up because I knew I had done it. And I've done it every day for like the last 2 months. And I can tell you, I have felt such a difference. Oh my goodness. I mean, the things that it said that it was going to do, like my hair, it's so much, it feels healthier. My skin is like glowy and it just feels so much softer. But as far as stress is concerned, it has health benefits like for reducing blood pressure, reducing stress levels, anti-inflammatory benefits. And so all of these things do aid in helping with stress. And so I think that my daily olive oil dose is definitely contributing to my better management of stress levels. Another thing that I highly recommend is, and I don't really know how to say that, I guess finding something that is just for you with that, admiring the beauty of life and the beauty of the world. And I know that sounds like super out there, but just the world is beautiful and life is beautiful, and just making things and picking out the things that really make you feel that and make you feel good, and just taking a pause for that. I am really I love flowers and plants, succulents, orchids. I have plants everywhere in my house. I remember at one point years and years ago, my kids were little, and my house was always a disaster. It felt like we were in a small house at that time, and the kids were little, and there were toys everywhere, and I was busy, and stuff was everywhere, and it just felt like the house was chaos. I started putting flowers on the kitchen table, and that was a way that it made me feel like if everything else in the world, in my life and in my home, is in total disarray, but you know what? Those flowers are super pretty, and it made me feel good. Fast forward all these years, and now the house is full of them. I have flowers and the kitchen table, in each of the bathrooms, and the dining room, and the living room. And then I have a plant corner in my kitchen breakfast nook area that I have orchids and succulents and herbs and all kinds of stuff. They're beautiful. I love them. They don't necessarily, I don't know if anybody else benefits from them other than, of course, the oxygen that is flowing through our home because of them. But I do. I look at them and it just makes me feel good. It makes me feel centered. It makes me feel grounded. Just even that brief look at them when I'm pulling out of my driveway, them because they would just get re-damaged. So I decided to plant plants and turn it into a French countryside type of setting. And I pause every time I get in my car and I look at it and I think that's really beautiful. So taking that extra time to admire the beauty, create something that it might be different for you. Maybe you hate flowers. I don't know how you hate flowers, but maybe you do. So maybe it's something else. Maybe it's music. Maybe you just like to hear music, or you like to play music, or maybe it's movement of some sort, or art, or whatever. Just take a second to appreciate the beauty that is around you, and that will help you when you're faced with situations that are stressful. Fifth thing, just breathe. I know that sounds so silly, but just take a second and breathe. And you can kind of combine these, I guess. And while you're admiring the beauty around you, you can breathe. But just do that breath in through your nose and out through your nose. Just take that breath and just feel the breath as it's coming into your body, and feel the breath as it's leaving your body. And that can help you remain centered when you're in a stressful situation. And it can help you and prepare you for those stressful situations. And then the last one, this is one that I really struggle with, and that's journaling. I started this back towards the beginning of the year for the first time in a number of years, but I find that it helps so much, and unfortunately, it is also one of those situations that the more I need it, the less I do it. And I, find that it's kind of hard for me to get into the habit of it. But then when I do it, it really, really helps me. But then again, it falls to the wayside. So this is something that I personally find very beneficial, but I also personally have a hard time keeping up with. I run into finding, and especially if I haven't done it in a few days or a few weeks or whatever, that I get, okay, dear diary, a lot has happened since we last talked. And it's like, that's so dumb, but that's what I think in my head. So that's why, in the Jenna Zen series, I've tried to provide you, and here I've tried to provide you with some prompts to help, start your inner conversation and start thinking about these things. Goodbye, past Jen. It was so nice to hear you. Although I'm not going to lie, I think I have gotten better with time. Okay, so now let's see if we can all alleviate some of our stress by at least having a list to work off of with our rising seniors this summer. Although I must say that seeing this list here makes me a bit panicky, but I am very grateful that I have it, and I'm sure it will feel super rewarding once I can start checking things off. Those of y'all with rising juniors, or even, I guess, rising sophomores, it's not like this isn't going to be helpful, because you're going to get there at some point. And some of these, it appears like I really should have thought of before, but I didn't. So no, we're not too bad. We're not too bad, but it won't hurt you to hear them earlier on. First, and hopefully this is one that we should be able to quickly and easily check off. They should have already picked their classes for senior year. Yes, applications do go in early, but their classes still matter. And college admission pros recommend that they continue to take each of their core subjects in their senior year. Second, they need to know what the hope is to do after graduation. Are they planning on a 4-year college or university? Great, because this list will help them out tremendously. Are they thinking more of a community college or junior college and then transfer path? If so, great. They will also need to go through the rest of this list. Are they thinking of taking a year off, or going to a trade school, or getting a job, or joining the military? All are also great options for them, and you will definitely need to do some research on what you need to be doing this summer to prepare. I like to only tell y'all about things that I'm very knowledgeable on, because I never want to pretend to know what I'm talking about when I'm not knowledgeable on something, because I don't want to ever make you not trust me. And I know that those are not my area of expertise. All right. And so I want you to do your research on that one. But college, well, I have been in college in some way since 1994. So I do believe I qualify as an expert. Okay, third, and another one that you may be able to check off or at least partially check off, they should have taken at least one ACT or SAT exam by this point. If they haven't, they should register for the August SAT or the September ACT tests. Keep in mind that the last possible date to take the SAT or ACT would be in October in order to make the early application, early decision deadline. It would still be possible for them to take the test in December for the January regular decision deadline, but they have to get it done by then. Many colleges even are still test optional since COVID, which in my opinion is how it should be, because although, as I have mentioned in the past, as my husband and my children tell me, I like to slip it in as many conversations as humanly possible. I did earn a 32 on my ACT, but even that, I really don't put much credence at all into these tests. But they are still a necessary evil and necessary for some colleges. So it is smart to have at least one test taken and maybe even retaken if they'd like to improve their score. Fourth, and this is one that some of y'all may be able to check off, but we cannot. Okay. I never even thought of this junior year. I swear, I don't even know what I was thinking of in junior year, but I know it was none of this. So if you are parents of younger high school students, do this because we are now behind the 8 ball on it, but it's okay. They should ask their advisor or counselor and 2 of their academic core teachers for letters of recommendation. Now, remember, most all teachers are 10-month employees, so they are on summer break. Or if they live in a state that pays teachers as terribly as the state of North Carolina does, they may even be working at a different summer job now too. So they may not be super responsive. But it is good to ask sooner than later. And maybe they'll even appreciate the ask during a slower time for them. So your child should email them with the subject line of a recommendation request for and their name. In the email, they need to be very polite. Remember, you're asking for a favor. All right. And so be polite. Remember to have them use their best writing skills. I know it's summer and most of their communication is via Snapchat, but remind them to go back and pull out what they've learned. If they know what they're hoping to study or the schools that they're hoping to apply to, great. They can include that if they want, but if not, no big deal. Just remind the teacher what semester and what class they were in. And trust me, we love and remember our students, but semesters and classes and years, they just all blend together for many of us. I have former students who you could tell me that I had last year or 5 years ago. And to be honest, you could convince me of either at this point. It's all such a blur. So ideally, it should be a teacher that they have also had some type of conversations with or been in organizations or activities with so that they know them as more than just a grade in the class. But regardless, they should still tell them that they were in their whatever class, whichever semester, and that they, of course, really enjoyed the class. So they're applying for colleges this fall and would really appreciate if they would consider writing them a letter of recommendation. Now, be sure that they include that they know that they are on summer break and also hope that they're enjoying their summer, but they wanted to be proactive in case this was an easier time for them to do letters. But of course, they don't need it until fall. Spell check, grammar check, proofread, and send. Fifth, and I'm sure that y'all have already begun to give this one some serious thought, if not even a lot of thought, but now is the time to formalize it as a thorough list. They need to create a comprehensive list of all of the schools that they would consider applying to. Now, they can start big and narrow it down if that's how their particular list seems to work out for them. In that case, the narrowed down list would be their primary list, and the others would be their intermediate list. Or for some kids, they might start narrow with their primary list and then go the other way and build a secondary intermediate list of colleges that they are still exploring. Either way is fine, but they need to have both lists pretty solidified by the start of school. Now, to put together this list, they'll need to do number 6, which is to research. This is the research stage. Yes, this includes a lot of research on various schools, which is looking at their websites and definitely checking out their socials. Instagram is a great tool for getting a good peek inside of a school. Many universities are really utilizing Instagram to kind of give a vibe for the school. Yes, of course, it's curated, but it's still a good solid look. Another part of this research is internal. They're going to need to do some introspection and some self-discovery about what it is that they want. Things about the school itself. Like, do they want a big school or a medium-sized school or a small school? Do they want to be near a city or more rural? How far do they really want to be away from home? This will all help in narrowing what schools for them to even consider. They're also going to need to start thinking about what it is that they want to study. I really, really dislike the "what do you want to be when you grow up?" question. And that's probably because I am grown up and I am a podcaster slash author slash professor of communication studies with a PhD in media studies and political communication, who worked in a political press office and in a sports marketing arena with a journalism master's degree and a business economics undergraduate degree. So clearly, I find education and career paths to be quite windy, and the "what do you want to be when you grow up" to be a very situational and circumstantial question. No, they don't need to know what they want to be forever. But they do need to have a bit of a jumping off point, which, to be honest, can literally be, "I have no fucking clue." That's fine too, seriously. But it does mean that when they are looking at colleges, they need to make sure that the colleges that they're looking for have an undeclared or exploration type option that will allow them to get a bit into school and explore their options before committing to a major. Similarly, if they think that they know, but they are not 100%, also okay. But that also means that you need to be sure that their school and their programs that they're looking at in the school makes it easy enough for them to switch majors and that they're not super locked in. And if they know what they want to do, great. But they do need to make sure that the schools offer that major or program. They'll also need to, of course, look at the grades of the incoming freshman class and the acceptance rates to determine if they even have a chance at that school. Number 7, visiting colleges. Just getting onto campus can really give them a feel for, can I envision myself living here, walking to class here, being in these buildings, being here every day? Other things too, like traveling there. I know that this beach girl here had mountain second home dreams that were squashed when he realized that the 5.5 hour drive to App was just too far. And as sad as I was to give up my personal mountain dreams, I'm definitely happy that he doesn't want to be that far away from home. Another visit that was to a small school made him realize that he's happier being more of a number and wants a bigger school. And he also realized that he can't do the "in the middle of nowhere there is a school" kind of option. So that's good too. All of these things will help narrow it down to what they do want. Even if some of the visits are virtual visits, that is still going to help too. Number 8, in preparation for applying, they're also going to need to do some reflection and make a list of any and literally every activity that they have done in their school years. Yes, it's okay to go back to middle school, like everything. Yes, include clubs and committees and organizations and sports and programs and volunteering and jobs and even more substantial school projects that they've worked on. This list is going to be super important in building up the story that's behind their application essays. Some colleges even give them an option of submitting a resume as part of their application. So having a list like this can help them to become, down the road, kind of like an informal resume that they could then edit or use wherever or whenever they might need it. Number 9, once they have done some introspection on what path they may want to head down course of study wise and some reflection on what they've done so far to get here, they need to write a vision or a purpose statement. So kind of what is their brand? Right? Both things that we've talked about here for us. So you may have even started working on yours in the past few months. You could even consider this like a soundbite or an elevator speech, essentially. It's a good process for them to go through to realize what makes them them, what makes them special, what makes them unique. How can they maximize these distinctive qualities to help them stand out in the applicant pool? And really in every other environment that they find themselves in. For all of us, we need to have this, right? We've already talked about all of these same reasons for all of us. And so for them, it's going to do the same types of things. Now, if you don't remember this process, have no fear because DJ Jen is here and I will be mixing that one up for you for the next summer remix episode. Number 10. This is a great time for them to get started on writing their application essays while they're not also in school trying to do schoolwork, because there will be a good deal of essay writing in the application process. I know that my son was very surprised when I told him that. And so I don't know if they don't realize that, but there's going to be a lot of essay writing. First, they need to write their personal Common App essay. Now, if you go to the Common App website, they do have the possible prompts for the 23-24 applicants. This does not need to be completed until they apply in fall, but this is arguably the most important thing that they've written so far, and so it needs to be really well done. And as someone who has taught writing and written articles and written a book and edited a seemingly endless amount of documents over the years, I will tell you that good writing is a process that takes time and rewriting and rewriting. So start early because this is not a one and done thing. Also, in addition to the personal essay, most colleges will also require supplemental essays. So they can even start seeing what those topics are for each of their primary schools, and they can even get a start on them now. It's a lot for them to do in the fall for sure. Number 11. Now, this is the more administrative side of things for your kids. They can get a head start on the more basic portions of the Common App. This Common App that I refer to, it's a nice thing about the current application process because, remember when we had to apply and you had to go in and you had to answer all of this basic birth date and address and school and GPA and all of those other things like a million different times, or for how many ever schools you applied. But now, because of this Common App, they just do it once on this. And so there are some basic parts that they could start working on now just to kind of get that done. And then for parents need to be checking on financial aid. and learn about the financial aid process. Because if you are looking for financial aid or even scholarship money, okay, so even if you're not going to get financial aid, but you would hope to be considered for scholarship money, you will need to fill out FAFSA and CSS forms in the US, which means that you need to have your documents in order, including like tax returns and stuff. So you're going to want to start getting a head start on that. And last, number 12, your kids can and should do things that will strengthen their applications. The summer is a great chance to add in some extras to boost up their application. Explore opportunities and ideas through jobs or internships or projects. These are things that they can often find or do through networking with family or friends or local businesses to just find opportunities that will allow them to gain experiences and set them apart from the pack. Maybe they take an online class or they get certified in something. They can continue developing their extracurricular activities, like if they're artists of any type, painters or writers or musicians or whatever, they can work on building their portfolios. Athletes, but they can continue looking to play. If they're looking to play in college, they should be getting in front of coaches, promoting themselves through Twitter, through their social media, and working on their skills. STEM students, they can focus on research, and social science focused students should volunteer or get involved with some advocacy work. The opportunities are endless, regardless what their interests are. They're all great ways to both get good experience to include in their essays and applications, but they're also good to find out what they enjoy doing. Or sometimes, even more importantly, they can find out what they don't enjoy doing. All of those things are going to help them take another step farther down the path. No, this senior summer isn't like any other that we've had with them, for sure. But don't fear. It sounds like a lot, but there is still plenty of time for family and for friends and lazy pool days and trips to the beach. Hopefully, having this list can help all of us be a bit more purposeful and organized in those moments between our summer fun. Thank you so much for listening. I truly appreciate you spending this time with me. Please remember to follow the show so that you don't miss out on any new content. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with your friends who might also benefit from or enjoy it too, because that's how we're going to grow our community. Reach out to me on socials, on Instagram and TikTok at Reframing Me, and on Facebook, it's Reframing Me, and join the Facebook group Reframing Me, the podcast community, to connect with other women who are also raising teens and rediscovering themselves. Until next time, be well, communicate, and always practice the pause.